What is up, everybody? Welcome back into Tide Talk Live. Stacy Blackwood here, riding solo on this edition of the show. We are powered by the Bleav Network and presented by FanDuel. We'll talk more about FanDuel coming up here in just a few minutes. Make sure you do like and subscribe here on YouTube. Jump in the live chat and give us your thoughts on the Crimson Tide. We want to hear from you in terms of questions, comments, concerns about the current offensive line coach opening and the search that's going on there. There does appear to be an early favorite for that job. And we'll talk about that here coming up in just a minute. But like I said, we are powered by the Bleav Network, which makes us free and available wherever you find your podcast. So make sure you like and download, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We would appreciate that. We're going to let some people file into the show. Like I said, we're here to talk about the offensive line coaching search, but we will also field any questions or comments that you have there in the live chat as well. And looking forward to that. If you happen to be watching the post live version of the episode on YouTube, make sure you jump in the comment section and give us your thoughts there as well. We'd love to hear from you guys there in the comment section. Um, I hope everybody's having a good Monday. Excited to be here today as we talk some Alabama football. It's kind of been a wild weekend. The whole coaching search thing kind of got kicked off on Friday night when it was announced that Coach Cap would be kind of relieved of his duties as the offensive line coach in Tuscaloosa, and then names quickly started being filtered through for his replacement there as the offensive line coach. And there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of rumors. There's a lot of clear indicators that maybe they have a guy in their sights. And so we'll talk about that throughout the episode. Once again, we are presented by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are winding down as the Super Bowl gets ready to take place in a couple weeks. And FanDuel is the best place for you to go and make your bets if you want to bet on the New England Patriots versus the Seattle Seahawks in the Super Bowl coming up here in 13 days. So head on over to FanDuel, our proud partner here at Tide Talk Live. So let's just dive right into this coaching search and kind of what we're hearing in terms of who could potentially be replacing Coach Cap as the offensive line coach. I want to start the conversation by bringing up the fact there's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion, and I think it's probably pretty true in terms of it looks like Coach DeBoer wants to have two guys coaching the offensive line. So we'll have a main offensive line coach and then potentially an assistant to that offensive line coach. And I think that's huge. I think that's a big point of emphasis for this team. If you look at what Coach DeBoer and his staff have done this offseason in terms of completely revamping the offensive line from a player personnel standpoint, it only makes sense that you revamp the offensive line from a coaching standpoint. You relieve Coach Cap of his duties. You're looking for a new offensive line coach. And from all indications, I think Coach DeBoer, if he had his way, he would bring in two guys to kind of fill that void that Coach Cap left as the offensive line coach, a main offensive line coach, and then an assistant for the offensive line coach, whether that be like a run game coordinator or something like that along those lines. So I think that's something to keep in mind as this coaching search continues to evolve and take place. And it wouldn't surprise me if a name were to be announced within maybe even today or within the next couple of days. I think this is going to move pretty fast in terms of a coaching search because I believe Coach DeBoer wants to get this kind of nipped in the bud. Recruiting is important right now, especially for the class of 2026 and also and beyond because 2027's class is going to start filling in as well. So that's really, really important to kind of get this coaching staff kind of all put together and in place while the coaches are on the recruiting trail, recruiting prospects for the future. So obviously the name that has been talked about the most within the circles is Adrian Clem, who is currently an offensive analyst for the USC Trojans. But this is a guy who has really a remarkable uh, resume from a coaching standpoint and a player standpoint as well. Still a relatively young guy at 48 years old. He played in the NFL for Coach Belichick, won 3 Super Bowls while in the NFL, has coached in the NFL, has coached at the Power Four level, the Group of Five level, the NFL level. This is a guy who has been around the block a time or two and has extensive ties to the state of California from a recruiting standpoint, which I believe is a point of emphasis for this coaching staff we have seen throughout the first 2 years of the Kalen DeBoer era how important recruiting the state of California has been to this coaching staff. And I think kind of targeting a guy like Adrian Clem continues to prove that this is something that the coaching staff wants to make a point of emphasis for future coaches in that area. Chef says, "Good afternoon, Bama family. I think coaches on offense know that they must get this line right. Plus, I Bleav the D line needs to be better as well. Roach has been on the clock for me. That is obviously a name that Alabama fans have kind of had on the hot seat for several years now. Freddie Roach, that is. And I'll say this: I don't think we have recruited the top end talent at the defensive line position. And I think we've saw that Coach Roach has had to kind of dig deeper from a coaching standpoint to get the most out of the guys that he does have. So I I understand the negative aspect that fans have on the defensive line, but defensive linemen cost a lot of money. And I think you've seen this coaching staff, and this even goes back to the Nick Saban era, whether it was poor evaluations or not willing to pay what it took to get those elite defensive players on the defensive front. And so you're working with higher end 4-star guys, some guys that you want to develop, and that's the guys that Coach Roach has had to go after. And so um, I understand if he fans that would like for this coaching staff to go in a different direction on the defensive line. But my question would be, are you positive you can find a upgrade on the defensive line from a coaching standpoint? That would be my only question in terms of if you do get rid of Freddie Roach, who are you going to get that you know for certain is going to be an improvement from what you had from Freddie Roach? And keeping it on the offensive line, I think it's obvious that a change needed to be made because the last 2 years have just been extremely poor from an offensive standpoint, and it's from an offensive line standpoint, and it hasn't been because of a lack of talent. Caden Roberts is probably going to, or Caden Roberts, Caden Proctor is probably going to be a first round pick. Uh, Parker Brailsford is probably going to be a day two pick. Um, Jaden Roberts, Geno Vandermark, I think those guys are probably going to land on NFL rosters, whether it's a practice roster or an actual 53-man roster. So I don't think it's been from a lack of talent. I think development has really struggled there. And I also think that evaluations have really struggled on the offensive line, even dating back to the latter part of the Nick Saban era in Tuscaloosa. He says, "I just need better development from the defensive line." I think that's kind of where I was going to. I think you saw guys like Tim Keenan improve throughout his career. I think you saw guys like Isaiah Fugga improve. What we got out of London Simmons, a 3-star guy as a true freshman last year, I think we need to give Freddie Roach some props for that. Um, Guys like James Smith, we didn't see much development there, but was that more of, hey, this guy couldn't be developed at Alabama because we couldn't coach well enough? Or was he maybe just a little overrated coming out of high school? I don't know. We'll see how he does at Ohio State. So I think there's been some evidence that Coach Roach has improved some of his defensive linemen, and but maybe there's some evidence that he hadn't on some of the others as well. But does that go back to poor evaluation? So, and that's obviously on the coaching staff as well. So I'm on the jury's still out in terms of Freddie Roach, but I would certainly understand it if Coach DeBoer decided that it was time to kind of move on from him as well. Um, Getting back to the offensive line, I was talking about Adrian Clem, who seems to be the front runner to at least be one of the coaches hired for the offensive line. And like I said, I don't think it's set in stone that Coach DeBoer is going to hire two guys to coach the offensive line. But I would be I would almost at this point I would almost be surprised if two guys were not brought in. But we'll keep our focus on Adrian Clem for right now, who seems to be a front runner to land at least one of the positions there on the offensive line coaching staff for Alabama. Like I mentioned, he's been at USC, or he was at USC for the 2025 season. Prior to that, he was the New England Patriots offensive line coach in 2023. In 2022, he was the associate head coach, the run game coordinator, and the offensive line coach for the Oregon Ducks. And just some kind of quick facts about his stint with the Oregon Ducks in 2022. The Ducks led the nation in fewest sacks allowed, with just 5 sacks given up for the entire 2022 season. In 2020, when he's the offensive line coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Steelers led the NFL with the fewest sacks allowed, just 14 sacks allowed in 2020 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which was seven fewer than any other team in the NFL. So he has some really good experience in producing offensive lines who can protect the quarterback, who can get a running game going. He loves a physical offensive line who can run the football, but he's also adaptable enough to understand that pass protection is important. And I think that's really clarified with what we saw with what he did with Oregon in 2022 and what he done with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2020. And this is not only a guy who has a lot of coaching experience. Like I mentioned, he played in the NFL for a long time at the highest level, playing for Coach Bill Belichick in New England. He also played for the Packers in 2005, for the Raiders in 2007. So this guy was a second round pick in the 2000 NFL draft out of Hawaii and spent several years in the NFL. So he's played at the highest level, he's coached at the highest level, and he also has plenty of college coaching experience as well at SMU, UCLA, Oregon, and USC. So he has plenty of experience, has a really nice resume, and I think would be a really good addition to this coaching staff. And also he has some familiarity with this coaching staff because his son actually played for Coach DeBoer and Coach Grubb at Washington, I Bleav in 2022. It might have been 2023, but either 2022 or 2023. So he knows this coaching staff really well. He knows Courtney Morgan as well. So this would be a really solid pickup. And if he happens to be hired, we'll obviously do a deeper dive into what Coach Clem has done throughout his career. As a coach at both the college level and the NFL level. So that's the guy who right now has the most buzz around him in terms of potentially being an offensive line coach or the next offensive line coach at Alabama. Adrian Clem, currently at USC, but I think has a really good shot of ending up in Tuscaloosa sooner rather than later. Obviously, fans want to know in terms of what's the potential of Coach Huff coming back to to work with Coach DeBoer. Brandon Jones from Missouri is a name that fans are really hot and heavy over right now because he has kind of led Missouri to be one of the most productive running teams in the SEC over the past few seasons. So those are two names that we're obviously watching. Scott Huff just wrapped up his season yesterday with the Rams. He's currently the tight ends coach for the Los Angeles Rams, and it was only year one of his 2-year deal with the Rams. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of plays out. But I'm not going to hold my breath on Coach Huff simply because it would be hard for me to imagine him leaving the NFL, a really good NFL job, coaching for a really great offensive mind in the NFL, having a really good position group at tight end. The Rams have a really good tight end room. It's hard for me to imagine him leaving that to come back and coach at the college level. But certainly anything is possible, especially given the relationship that he has with Coach DeBoer and this entire coaching staff in Tuscaloosa. Another name, like I mentioned, is Brandon Jones, currently the offensive line coach at Missouri. Now, there hasn't been any kind of official word on him yet, but it is a name that fans have kind of been monitoring. He's done a really good job coaching Missouri. They've had a couple NFL draft picks over the last couple of years, both first round and early round picks there at Missouri. So he's done a really good job of developing talent, especially at the tackle position. He had really good tackles this past year at Missouri. He's had really good tackle play his entire tenure there with the Tigers. And obviously, we all know how good of a rushing tack Missouri had, especially in 2025 with Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts leading the way at running back position, running behind a Brandon Jones coached offensive line. So Brandon Jones is obviously the name we'll try to keep track of as well and see if there's any kind of official word on what could be happening with Brandon Jones. And if he has any interest in Alabama, if Alabama has any interest in him. So we'll just kind of see how that goes and kind of plays out as his coaching search continues. I want to take a moment to tell you real quick about FanDuel. Our Tide Talk Live is presented by FanDuel. And right now, the early odds for the Super Bowl are out. The Seattle Seahawks are currently a 4.5 point favorite over the New England Patriots. So if you want to make your bet on the Super Bowl coming up in a couple weeks, head on over to FanDuel right now and put your bet in there. The money line, Patriots, you can get the Patriots at plus 190 on the money line. The over and under sitting at 46.5 right now. And like I mentioned, Seattle is a 4.5 point favorite in the Super Bowl. That's setting up to be a really, really awesome matchup. Right now, the favorite to win Super Bowl MVP, according to FanDuel, is Sam Darnold at plus 125. So if you want to make some bets on the Super Bowl that's coming up in a couple weeks, make sure you head on over to FanDuel right now, our presenting partner here at Tide Talk Live. So with that being said, guys, if there's any questions, comments, concerns about the current O line coaching search, put them in the live chat right now. And I would love to address that and love to talk about that or anything in terms of this Alabama football team while we wait on some questions to roll in, just want to give you guys some a heads up of what you can look forward to from Tide Talk Live moving forward here in the what we'll call the off season. We all know there's really no off season in this age of college athletics, but we have some really cool shows planned. Kind of leading up to the start of spring practice, which is going to be around the week of March 8th or so. So we have several shows planned out for you guys. We're going to lead that off once this coaching search is kind of finalized and we get an offensive line coach hired and the breaking news kind of slows down a little bit. We're going to start focusing on this 2026 team and what fans can expect from the Crimson Tide going into 2026, especially the spring portion of the season. So first, we're going to bring out our top 10 returning players for Alabama in 2026. So that's going to be a lot of fun to break down. I can't wait to see how Jake's kind of puts his list together. I'll obviously have my own list as well, and we'll kind of break those down on an episode. Then we're going to have our entire kind of preview and depth chart projections for each position group for the Crimson Tide going into spring practice. We'll do offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, defensive back, our wide receivers, tight ends, off ball linebackers, edge players, the running backs, all the position groups. We're going to break those positions down, kind of preview what we're expecting from those position groups, and also provide our predictions for what that depth chart could look like once spring practice starts rolling around in early March. And then also, we have a show planned where we're going to kind of give our evaluation of the coaching staff. And of course, we got to wait until this coaching staff kind of gets finalized for the 2026 season before we can do that. But that's something we also plan on doing before spring practice gets here in early March. So we have a lot of content ready to roll out throughout the next month or so. And we're excited about that here at Tide Talk Live. Once again, just want to thank you guys for us having back-to-back record-setting months, both in December of 2025 and here in January of 2026. Our show has been exploding both on YouTube side and on the podcast side as well. So thank you guys so much for the continued support on both those platforms. We could not do this without you guys, and we certainly appreciate it more than you could ever know. So excited about the future of Tide Talk Live, and we have some jam-packed shows and content coming up from you guys for the month of February, and we can't wait to kind of roll those episodes out. And our first preview show for kind of the position groups is going to be the offensive line. So we really got to get this coaching staff nailed down here so we can kind of break that down on a deeper level, and we're excited about that here at Tide Talk Live. Any questions before we decide to roll out? I just wanted to kind of get this show out today to kind of tell you where this coaching search was currently at and maybe what you could expect to happen over the next couple of days because I'm I'm kind of leaning to where we could probably see a hire announced sooner rather than later. I don't have a date, I don't have a time, but I do think this coaching search is going to start to wind down relatively soon. And like I said, I'm also hearing that this could be a situation where Coach DeBoer hires two separate guys to coach the offensive line. You could have your offensive line coach, and then that offensive line coach could obviously have an assistant, where he could maybe focus on the running game, something that the Crimson Tide fans are really aching to have again, a really good rushing attack. So that is something we'll be continuing to monitor here at Tide Talk Live. And if there's no questions or concerns or thoughts or opinions left there in the live chat, I can start to wind the show down. But if you guys have anything right now, go ahead and put that up there in the live chat. Would love to discuss it with you here on the live show. Also, Jake and I plan to do an episode uh, once the coach has been hired. Friday night, kind of last Friday night, we recorded an episode and we released it, and the exact time that the show was released, that's when Coach Cap, the news that he had kind of been let go or whatever happened there, was announced. So we just had kind of real poor timing there. Unfortunate timing would be the right way to put it. So we don't want to start recording a bunch of stuff and get that stuff published, and that's when a coaching hire is made, and it kind of just screws up our algorithm and all that kind of stuff. So we're kind of holding off and waiting on that. It may be a situation where we have to have a quick live show and reaction show to a hiring, but we're going to be here to kind of break all that down, and we're certainly excited to kind of see what direction Coach DeBoer goes into, and how what this coaching staff could look like going into 2026. Because, like I said, we're I don't know 40, 45 days away from the start of spring practice, so super excited, cannot wait for that. More football on the way, and in the meantime, like I said, we have plenty of content we're going to be rolling out leading up to spring practice, and obviously we'll continue to keep up with the basketball team as well. I know we have a lot of fans who love Bama hoops, and we do too, and we'll kind of keep you posted on the latest around there. And obviously, the biggest news there was Charles Bediako made his return on Saturday night. Hopefully, this team can get healthy. That's it's kind of hard to tell what this team can be this year because they've just been so unhealthy. So hopefully, Amari Allen and Aiden Holloway can get back really soon, and this team can kind of reach its full potential, especially with the addition of Charles Bediako. So excited to see what Nate Oates and the basketball team can do as well. Also, the women's team is ranked right now, so basketball is looking good in Tuscaloosa. But if there's no other questions, in terms of the offensive line coaching search, I am going to wrap this episode up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Like I said, if you're watching the post live recorded show of this on YouTube, make sure you jump in the comment section. Give us your thoughts on the O line coaching staff and what your thoughts are there, who they should hire, how you kind of hope this whole coaching search plays out. Should they hire two coaches? Is that something you would like to see in terms of the offensive line? We'd love to get everybody's opinion on that moving forward. But that's going to wrap it up, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, make sure you like and subscribe here on YouTube. Help us reach that goal of 4,000 subs. We want to get there before spring practice starts in early March. So help us reach that goal. And then our goal will be to reach 5,000 by the time the college football season gets underway later this year. So help us reach those goals. Thank you so much for helping us get to 3,500. Let's just keep building the momentum here in 2026. Like I said, we are powered by the Bleav Network, which makes us free and available wherever you find your podcast. So if the podcast side is your thing, make sure you subscribe and download there as well. Leave us those written reviews on Apple Podcasts. That helps grow the channel there and spread the word to other Alabama football fans. But for Stacey Blackwood, this has been Tide Talk Live. I'll see you guys again real soon. Until next time, roll Tide.